真是费了一番功夫。既然如此的话，这样一来的话，量子队终于齐了。诸位，让我来试试你们的强度吧。
Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video. Today we'll be going through CN Fuxuan's team comp analysis. We'll be essentially covering what kind of units you guys can run with Fuxuan. As I've mentioned in my previous Fuxuan analysis, she can pretty much be run with most, if not all units, because sustained units in general are just very versatile. But I'll just be going through exactly what are the specific comps that she can really shine in. Right, so without further ado, let's get into today's content. Regarding the disclaimers, like I mentioned just now, due to a sustained unit's flexibility, Fuxuan can be optimally used with most, if not all, team compositions. And as always, for all of my guides, viable is not the same as optimal. Right, Fuxuan's team composition is greatly influenced by the inclusion of Silverwolf. Now, if players do not have Silverwolf, constructing a standard DPS plus sustain plus 2 supports or a sub DPS team composition is going to be very generic, and for that I would like to refer you guys back to the original CN Fuxuan analysis. But for this particular guide, we'll be largely focusing on how we can make use of Fuxuan together with Silverwolf herself. So when it comes to the team building basics, here are some of the criteria when constructing a team with Fuxuan in place. Number 1, Fuxuan must survive, right? Because if Fuxuan does not survive in any team, then the team will quickly collapse without Fuxuan's damage mitigation as well as damage reduction. Number 2, Fuxuan must be skill point positive. Even if we're going to be running Fuxuan as a DPS with 4-piece quantum, she cannot be a completely skill point negative unit where we want to use more of her skills just to cast ultimates more frequently. If we do this, then this will cannibalize into our main DPS's damage output, which we do not want. Number 3, Fuxuan must provide sufficient healing for the entire team, and this is going to be difficult if our team lacks the damage or if the enemy is dealing too much AoE, right? Either by doing too much AoE damage or they're just too frequent of an AoE. For us to mitigate this, Fuxuan must be able to provide timely ultimates as well as enough HP to provide the sustain required for our entire team. And lastly, the DPS on Fuxuan's teams are highly recommended to use crit damage chest, and this goes for any of Fuxuan's team comps because Fuxuan's skill, as we know, it increases our unit's crit rate. Alright, so we can actually make use of this to transition out from a crit rate chest into a crit damage chest, and in fact we can make use of this skill to proc Rutilant Arena's 2-piece effect. So these are the generic team building basic ideas for Fuxuan. Moving on to our very first team is going to be Mono Quantum. As you guys can see over here, the core is going to be Silverwolf, and as for our 2 other units, they're going to be our DPS. Alright, Celia is going to be our main DPS and Qingque is going to be our sub DPS, or vice versa, whichever you want. We're not going to be running links, and I'll be explaining that in just a moment. But for the benefits of Mono Quantum team, the number 1 benefit for anybody to want to run Mono Quantum is their resource efficiency. Right, Mono Quantum team, they are extremely beneficial for new players because this team can be used to clear all content regardless of elements, right? Simulated Universe, Swarm Disaster, Memory of Chaos, Forgotten Hall. As long as you're using this team, the enemy will always be marked by quantum winners thanks to Silverwolf implanting quantum winners with 100% accuracy since our entire team is quantum, right? Number 2, a relic sharing. Now this entire team's relics can also be obtained from the same dungeon, which is from the Genius and Wuthering Cavern. Celia and QQ, they can make full use of Genius 4-piece effect, while Fuxuan and Silverwolf acts as tanky, sustain and debuffer with Wuthering set. Assuming of course they're both at E0, and we're not going to be discussing the DPS capabilities. Lastly, simplistic design. This entire team is very beginner friendly. There's not a lot of very complicated mechanics going on. Silverwolf just needs to mark her weakness, the DPS just deal enough damage, and Fuxuan will sustain the entire team. Right, there's no mechanics like speed tuning, action value manipulation, buff timings and all that kind of stuff, so it's very easy to pick up, especially for new players who just start out the game. Now regarding the weakness of Mono Quantum team, the first one is definitely going to be current Mono Quantum team is not really complete because they are missing a crucial harmony, or rather a buffer, to increase our main DPS's damage. Qingque, or Silly being used as a sub DPS is not optimal because they are unable to show the true potential as the main DPS, because they are both technically kind of like hyper carry setup where you want as much buffs on them as possible. They will be much better off as a main DPS and then add on a support to increase their overall damage capabilities. Next, Silverwolf is an absolute must because the foundation of Mono Quantum team is to implant in quantum weakness to any enemy, right? Because if we do not have Silverwolf, then any other team would frankly work just fine, if not even more fine than a Mono Quantum team. So Silverwolf is the entire foundation for Mono Quantum team. And the last one is the need for weakness implant. It actually drops over time as players build more and more units, because eventually when we get to a point after playing the game for maybe 1 or even 2 years, our players should be able to put together a well-rounded team that can cover all 7 elements, and when that time comes, we don't really need Silverwolf's weakness implant that much anymore. And last point as to why I don't recommend placing Lynx with Mono Quantum team, let's just talk about Lynx first, right? She has an excellent group Dispel ultimate as well as additional sustain provided for the entire team to make sure that our Fuxuan isn't the only one sustaining, right? However, with our current testings, as well as everybody that has been playing Fuxuan for the past couple of days, Fuxuan will be more than enough to solo sustain for our entire team for most content. There may be niche situations such as Swarm Disaster 5, and we might need to slot in a Lynx instead. But even in Swarm Disaster 5, there's very little situations where you want to run Lynx or even Mono Quantum team because they are already weak to Quantum, right? The Swarm Disaster True thing, they're already weak to Quantum. So running Silverwolf just for the sake of implanting weakness, this situation does not exist, right? You can pretty much just run anybody you want, or rather a dual element setup, which I'll explain later, instead of running Mono Quantum team, because there's no weakness for you to implant anyways, right? Next, Lynx survival instincts on Fuxuan. It reduces the impact of damage distribution, right? Because the whole purpose of Fuxuan as a destruction Because the whole purpose of Fuxuan as a preservation unit is in case our other units gets hit, the damage distribution can help to redirect a majority of the damage back to Fuxuan. So if we're going to have Lynx survival instincts placed on Fuxuan, then the damage distribution won't really kick in as often anymore, right? It reduces the effectiveness of damage distribution. And more often than not, Qingque's sub-DPS capabilities will provide a much better playing experience compared to Lynx's additional sustain capabilities. But that being said, Lynx plus Fuxuan will definitely make for an extremely comfortable auto team for any content. Much better than, say, Qingque or Silly as a sub-DPS. So if players just want to be going brainless, just want to clear any content without any worries in the world, then Lynx and Fuxuan can be used. But in terms of an absolute damage output, on top of considering their survivability, then Lynx is not going to be as good of a fit compared to Qingque or Silly. Next, we'll be moving on to the dual element setup. The core is still going to be Silverwolf, followed by all of our support cards, right? Bronya, Tingyun, Yukon, Asta, and Pella. And essentially they have to be a support. And following that is going to be the same element DPS. So for example, if you're using Bronya, you're going to be running a wind DPS such as Blade or Stunhig. Then you're going to be running Tingyun, you're going to be running another lightning DPS such as Jingyuan or Kafka. Then you're going to be running Yukong, it's going to be Invisibility, so on and so forth, right? You guys get the idea. So what are the benefits of running a dual element team compared to mono element team, right? Or rather mono quantum? The benefits, number one, is definitely going to be increased coverage, because instead of raising a main DPS for every element, dual elements still drastically cuts down on the need for element diversity, albeit not as much as a mono quantum, right? You still probably need to build a little bit more DPS units compared to just building a single team of mono quantum, but it still reduces the amount of resources needed to cover every single element, because of course Silverwolf is there for you to implant the right weakness. Secondly, it definitely does much higher damage compared to mono quantum, which essentially addresses mono quantum's lack of harmony unit. And now our main DPS enjoys both a buffer and a debuffer in the form of the same element buffer and Silverwolf, while Fuxuan is there to sustain the entire team for this dual element setup. So in an absolute sense, where if you guys find that you're lacking the damage to clear a specific stage, then more often than not, dual element team is going to be there for you to increase the damage output. Lastly, it's universal supports, right? Investing in units like Pella, Asta, Tingyun, Bronya, and Yukong not only benefits like one dual element team. You're not going to just be raising them for dual elements specifically with Fuxuan, but any team can make use of these harmony and nihility characters because they're all extremely beneficial, extremely universal, and everybody can benefit from them, right? So you guys are not really wasting your resources per se investing in these supports. The only thing is just you probably need to raise a little bit more DPS compared to a mono quantum team. So after all that is mentioned, what are the cons related to a dual element team? Like I mentioned just now, this team definitely requires more resource investments compared to mono quantum, which if you use mono quantum, you can just run them on any stage. Whereas dual element, you still need to invest in a rather diverse pool of DPS support units in order to guarantee the weakness implant in exchange for the higher damage that dual element can provide. Next, there's a lack of absolute synergy. Now, what I mean by absolute synergy is that Silverwolf and Fuxuan, they are not as synergistic as compared to the main DPS's original team. So for example, if you guys are going to be running Jingyuan, more often than not, you will rather run Jingyuan with Tingyun and Asta or Tingyun and Bronya. Right, you guys won't really run Silverwolf with Jingyuan because Silverwolf is a single target debuffer and Jingyuan really needs the speed or action value to increase lightning lock stacks. Another example, for example, right, you guys could be running Pella and Yanqing with Silverwolf and Fuxuan, but Yanqing will perform much better if there is Japart on the team instead, because Japart can provide Yanqing with shields, right? And Yanqing, once you get hit, loses social sync, is gonna lose quite a large portion of his damage. So this is why I say they lack absolute synergy as compared to the teams where the main DPS can really synergize with every single character in the entire team. But of course, this is definitely going to be the trade-off that players have to bear if they want to just reduce the overall resources for an absolutely peak perfect synergy compared to this team, which is still pretty synergistic, but it is just not as synergistic. Lastly, the last weakness is that there is going to be bruiser incompatibility. Now, I do say that dual element you can pretty much run with any DPS, but there is an exception, which is the units that requires enemies targeting them, specifically Clara and to a certain extent Blade. It is not as viable because Fuxuan does have very high taunt value, and if you're going to be running Fuxuan with like her Landau's Choice or even Moment of Victory, right, this further places Fuxuan's taunt value even higher, so Blade and Clara might not get hit as often, which will definitely reduce their overall DPS capabilities. So in summary, Fuxuan by herself is an extremely flexible unit that can be paired with any team, just like any sustained unit. This entire guide is more to reduce the doubt and uncertainty for team compositions, especially for players with Silverwolf. At the end of the day, it is up to the viewer to decide what kind of team they want to use. If you guys don't have Silverwolf, then Fuxuan honestly can just be ran with most, if not every single team. If you guys do have Silverwolf, then I hope that this entire content today helped you guys to find out exactly what kind of team comps you guys want to use. So to summarize things a little bit, Fuxuan alone, she's optimal with all units except for bruisers. Number 2, the most versatile and most comfortable team comp is going to be the mono quantum team with Fuxuan plus Silverwolf and all quantum unit. And then lastly, for more damage but more resource intensive team, that's going to be the dual element team with Fuxuan and Silverwolf as the foundation plus the same element DPS and supporters. Note that high pressure gameplay such as Swarm Disaster Fight may require double sustain for Fuxuan, right? So you might run Fuxuan with Lynx, Fuxuan with Natasha, Fuxuan with Luocha. So this type of team comps is definitely very niche. You guys wouldn't be running this for almost every other content unless we releases more of them in the future. And at the end of the day, you guys gotta experiment with yourself because theory can only go so far. Alright, so with that, we've come to the end of today's video. Hope that you guys enjoy and learn something today. If you guys would like to engage in further discussions, feel free to check out my Discord, Pokke's Village, where we have a very active community talking about Stario every single day. If you guys want to check out my stream, that's going to be twitch.tv/MrPokke. I'm live almost every single day now because of the MiHoYo stream event. A schedule will be updated on the Discord server as well. Right, so with that, we've come to the end of today's content, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.